Humanity Matters.
Hello, and welcome to Ordinary Heroes here on HMTV at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County. I'm your host, Bernie Furshpan of Ordinary Heroes, and I have two very special guests with me, two dear friends from my past, a blast from the past. Miriam and Rina, thank you so much for joining me. I'm glad that you drove. Well, you didn't drive, you've been driven. Yes, across county lines to be with me, to spend some time, to talk about our past. And I'm excited that you're here. So let's see how this conversation goes. I have a few thoughts. And first of all, let's talk a little bit about yourselves just in general, just to start the conversation. Miriam Will was married to Marcel Will, who were very dear friends of my parents, both my parents. May they rest in peace, all of them. Yes. Rina Berman was married to Zvika Berman. And you have two lovely sons, as well as Miriam. She had two lovely sons, and I'm so glad to see you. We've been talking to each other every now and then, and I was waiting for the moment where we can reunite and have some conversation and bring back some really nice memories, right? Right. Miriam, let's start off with you. You grew up?
I grew up mostly in Poland.
Uh-huh.
And then in 1957, we immigrated to Israel, and from Israel to United States.
Now, we first know you from Yazur, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right.
Now, some people call it Azur, but
Yazur.
It's Yazur.
Yazur.
It was originally an Arab village, wasn't it?
Yes.
And so I have very fond memories. I have very
You
vivid
remember?
memories. Yes, I do. Very vivid memories of Yazur. And I remember that you guys lived up on a hill somewhere on the other side by Hulon, if I'm not mistaken, towards Hulon.
Tovat Holon.
Right.
And where your parents first lived before, when even she had you and your brother.
Right.
And my husband was even in an engagement party between your parents.
Marcel, I remember him as a very smart guy. He was a great conversationalist. You can have a conversation with him about any topic. I remember in Queens, you lived in the Forest Hill, Kew Gardens area.
Right.
And he bought his first stereo, and he was listening to Beethoven, and he blasted it for us, and it was beautiful, and he was so excited about it. I have these little memories that pop up, but he was a very smart guy, and I really enjoyed having conversations with him.
Thank you.
And I miss him terribly.
Me too.
Yeah.
All of us.
Yeah. How are your boys doing?
My boys are okay. You know, one is living in San Francisco.
Right.
The other one in Manhattan.
Right.
And they're doing okay.
Very good. I'm happy to hear that. I hope that they continue to do well, and you look terrific. And
two grandchildren.
Oh, okay.
Right. Two boys.
That's wonderful.
Right. And
How old are they?
One is 18, one is 20.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
You know, grown up.
Nice.
Currently traveling in Europe, which I told them to take off their Magen David.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. You know, years ago, we had no problem wearing it.
Right.
Why is it that today we have to be so concerned about it? It kind of reminds me of the 1930s. You can't really show who you are, but you can if you really want to. I tell people, don't be afraid. Right. But there is reason for concern, and I can understand that.
The history tends to repeat itself.
Right. And why is that? Because people don't remember the history, or they don't want to learn it, or they change the history. There's a lot of people who are, for example, Holocaust deniers. They twist the history. They call them, it's called twistery. They're twisting the history. They're changing the narrative of what actually happened. They're minimalizing what happened. And so this is the problem. And so Jews are blamed for a lot of things, and they've been blamed for a lot of things for 2,000 years. I think we're kind of used to it. at this point, after 2,000 years, we're still around, aren't we? But we're doing great.
And we're going to be around.
And we're going to be around, and we're doing great. And we have a homeland, and we show the world what we can accomplish for the rest of society, right? We do a lot of great things for humanity.
That's true. Most of the Nobel Prize winners are Jews.
Right. Who's one of the first countries to send people out whenever there's an earthquake?
Sure.
Humanitarian aid is one of the most important things that we do, right? So, Rina,
Yes.
you were married to Zvika.
Yeah, for 60 years.
60 years. And Zvika, did he...
He was born in 1942 in Russia.
In Russia.
Where Miriam was born.
Right, they're related.
They're
They're cousins, first cousins, that's right.
Her father and my mother-in-law, brothers and sisters. And he came 57 to Israel. And we got married in 64. In 1965, we came here. And the first people that I met, it was your parents and
That's
your
right.
mom.
And the Pilniks, too, because they lived, if I remember, in your building.
After that.
After that. And I remember they lived in
Okay.
your building, right?
Yes.
Am I right?
We moved together.
Yes.
Okay. And then your mom was the best person that I could ever meet. I was 18 and a half, and I was 19 when I had my first son, and she was like a mother to me.
Wow.
She helped me, and she taught me how to raise my child.
That was my mom.
That was your mom.
She was a very special lady.
And she was a very special lady because we used to meet every day. And 2 o'clock, she ran home to be home to make sure that when you get home, she's going to be there and have dinner for you.
She was
Not
like that.
even once she missed.
She was like that until we were in high school. She worked in Alexander's for a short period and felt so guilty that she wasn't home for us that she quit her job just to be home. That's the kind of mom she was.
This was, she said, it's 2 o'clock, I got to go home.
Yeah. So I remember her not just raising me and my brother, but she also raised my father.
Yes.
She did, because he was traumatized at age 10 when he ran into the forest and lived there for 3 years. So she made him the food
That he liked.
that reminded him of his mother, the Polish food. I wanted Italian food because I lived in an Italian neighborhood. I wanted spaghetti meatballs.
No, she made
picha, right? And picha was disgusting to me. I couldn't take it.
But she didn't make it for you. She made it for your father.
She made it for my father, but we had to eat it. So, he came first. He was always first. I was wrong. He was always right. And it was always a struggle. It was like sibling rivalry, me and my dad.
She used to call them oitzer. Oitzer is
treasure. Treasure. Oitzel, she called me and my brother Oitzel, my father Oitzel. They loved each other. They were an incredible couple. I told my wife, Joanne, when I first met her, she said, do you know of any couples that were madly in love? I said, my parents. They were fantastic.
They respected each other more than
but they
loved
were
each
just
other.
beautiful together.
But your father was a very special person.
He was.
He took care of everybody.
He did, yeah. He was a very kind and generous person. I say that all the time.
Yes.
In spite of what he went through, and in spite of the fact that his neighbors murdered his mother, his father, his 4-year-old brother, his sister, his other brothers, in spite of all that, he didn't lose hope with humanity. He didn't distrust a lot of people. Yeah, he had a little mistrust. He had 3 bolts on the door, okay? I remember every night he would bolt and unbolt and bolt and make sure that his family was safe. So I miss those days. I have fond memories. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you pictures and tell me what feelings or what thoughts do you have? What went through your minds when you were all together like this? These are just a few. I have many photographs of both of you and your husbands and your families. I have a lot. I have most of the pictures, but I just grabbed a couple just to show you and tell me, what are your thoughts when you see these pictures?
Wow.
I don't even... Yes, it's in my house,
Yeah? And it's a picture of you and my mother.
Yes.
And how old do you think you guys were at that time?
We were young. I live in my house already 52 years.
Yeah.
So it's
Same
probably...
house.
Same house. So it's probably in the beginning. Yeah.
Wait, this was not in Queens. This is in Staten Island.
Staten Island already, right. I see the china closet and that. Who knows? But
let me see.
She was something special for me.
I can tell you, my mom was very young here.
Yeah.
She was definitely
But
in
I
her...
don't know why we didn't write the years and the
Some
back.
pictures she did, not
She
all
did.
of them. Not
I
all
don't
of
do
them.
it too, so
Right.
it was mistake.
So take a look at the next picture. What do you see there? Rina, what do you see?
What do I see? I see me. I
Yeah.
see Tzvika. I see your mom. I think I see your uncle. And this one, I think it's my sister, Dvora.
Right,
The top
Dvora.
one,
Dvora.
she was here for a whole month.
Right. I remember her very well.
That's Dvora.
Yeah.
And I think this one is Ahuva.
That's right, Ahuva
next
and
to her.
Yossi. Yeah.
Yossi, yes. Yeah. This...
What do you
This
remember
was-
from those days? What do you-
This was in the basement and your parents' house.
That's right. They used to
They-
throw parties.
Parties.
That was a big deal back then with Holocaust survivors. They all had bars and basements and they all got together, right? And it's not like they didn't want to include neighbors, but they really understood each other. They took care of each other.
We were laughing at the same jokes. We
Yeah.
had more or less the same background.
Right.
So we have the memories of when we were even younger.
Yes.
Oh, we had the memories from our parents.
Yeah.
So it's my parents were with the living, so it's a lot.
Your mother had a Moshe, and Sarah had a Moshe, so I had a Moshe too. Mike's Hebrew name is Moshe.
Oh, so you had Michael.
had a Moshe
And
too.
I remember him as Moshe. I don't
Moshe.
remember him as Michael.
No.
Was it officially
No, his name is Mike,
Yeah.
but officially his name is Mike. His Hebrew name is Moshe.
I
But
see.
we called him Moshe till he went to school because his grandma,
Right.
Moishele, my Moishele.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah.
I wanted.
So that's what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Kept calling him Moishele.
Yeah.
So wherever I refer to him, because my sister has a Mike too,
Yeah.
so we called Moishele and Mike.
Well, we have bar mitzvah pictures, we have wedding pictures, right, all
yes.
together.
I have beautiful for my two sons' bar mitzvah.
Nice.
Your parents lit a candle. And they
Nice.
look very, very nice.
Your parents lit the candle
Yeah.
by us too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I have a big picture.
That's a very special honor
Right.
to give somebody the opportunity to light a candle. Now,
On a bar
what is
mitzvah.
all of that about? Now, lighting candle means life, right? When you light the eternal light, it represents life. And so giving somebody that honor to honor their family or that you honor them to light a candle is very special. And sometimes there's not enough candles for all of your friends, right?
True.
And so you have to be very selective who
That's
you
so
ask
true.
to light a candle, right? So how do you do that? Is it about how long you've spent with a person, how long you know them, your family ties perhaps, how close you are to them? What makes you decide who to honor when it comes to candlelight? We can talk about this honestly because it's something that I've always pondered about.
So we usually give it to a family, right?
Right.
So
Number
we
one,
give it
first,
to the
yeah.
grandma or the but then we give whatever left, we give it to our good friends.
Right. Now, when I was young, I remember my bar mitzvah, and my rabbi, who taught us the, right, wrote a speech for us, right, in English.
Right.
So in the speech, right in the beginning, there was the honoring of my parents, my grandparents, who I never met, family members who were killed in the Holocaust. And this was very typical of all the bar mitzvahs. Everybody mentioned those that were not there
Not with us.
to honor them. Now, to me, as a kid, it didn't mean that much. I'm just thinking back. I didn't even know who they were. It was just I mentioned their names. My parents didn't talk to me much about them, so it wasn't that substantial to me. But it was important to them that I mention it. And I'm glad I did, because I wouldn't have thought of it, quite honestly. As a kid, you think of yourself. You're selfish as a little kid, right? You don't think of yourself. You think about your friends and your life. But it's a good thing that with the Jewish tradition, there's a little bit of that
honoring.
imposition to honor those from before, right? Generations from before. And that's a very valuable value and a lesson to teach young people. So that's part of our tradition. And it's something that's very important.
Sometimes we're going overboard and we're giving the name after somebody that is not there.
Right.
Very close.
Correct.
And sometimes the name does not fit United States. So
Right.
so you have to be very, very careful.
Well,
Anyway.
back then they weren't careful. They said the names. I think they were
Right.
very proud. So here's the question. Back then, when we did bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, they don't do that like they used to today, right? Bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs is all, it's like a glamour party. Who can outdo who? They spend thousands and thousands of dollars to entertain. It's not the same meaning as it was back then. It was a rite of passage for a young adult that they went through.
Become a man at 13.
You become a man. And I didn't understand what that meant, but it meant puberty. That's what it meant, really.
You take all the responsibility.
But it's also when the hormones kick in. You know, biologically speaking, you actually change your attitude, your behavior, your voice starts to crack. And so back in the day, you know, even kashrut, even, you know, doing things that are kosher, cleansed the food. They didn't have refrigerators at the time, so they didn't know how to purify food to keep it, you know, sanitary and hygienic practices. So they had rituals that really were very valuable, but now are outdated, but they're meaningful to understand where hygiene came from. Jewish faith included hygienic practices.
You
How
have to
far
wash
back it
your
goes.
hands. You have to wash your hands.
That's
before
why
you
Jews
eat.
didn't spread the plague, because they washed their hands during that time. And many Jews were blamed for spreading the plague because they didn't contract it. They were pulled out of their homes and burned alive. It's crazy what Jewish people went through for so many years. And here we are, resilient, strong, proud. And this is how we should continue. And I'm so glad that the two of you are here, because you remind me of all these wonderful things that are so meaningful to me now more than when I was young. Right?
And your kids knows about it? You tell
My
them?
kids went to Solomon Schechter,
Oh, okay.
and they do know about it, and they understand it, and they're proud. Tamara in particular is very proud because she's raising her two boys Jewish. And she's very proud as a Jew and stands up for Israel, Jonathan too. And it's very meaningful to them. And all of these things, you know, all the things that we hear as youngsters become more meaningful as we get older. But it's so important to plant these seeds when you're young. And so hate also is planted in young people at a very young age. And that's why it blossoms when they get older. And so we have to understand where hate comes from. It's an indoctrination from a very young age.
We preach
Yeah.
goodness. We preach we are the people of the book. We are clean. We are everything. And it's still, we have so much hate around us.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why they hate us. My personal opinion is that there's some kind of envy. There's some kind of jealousy. They want to be included with a lot of the things that we do, and we do include them, but there's always been that envy that we're taking stuff away from them. I mean, that's part of the propaganda, right? That we control money, we control the banks, we even control the weather. That's the part of the propaganda, is that we have control over these things, and they want to be part of that. And it's not like we don't allow them. First of all, we don't control these things. That's where this narrative is so wrong. Is that we don't control, but this narrative apparently keeps being passed from generation to generation, and it's being propped up.
It goes on the cover for a while, and
Yes.
then it comes up again.
Right, but it's always there, right?
Right.
It's always underneath.
And then
the
there is
surface.
an excuse. Before there was one excuse, now there is Israel as an excuse. So there is always an excuse, but it's there.
It's anti-Semitism at its very core, but they call it something else on the outside. But when you remove away the curtain, there's the anti-Semitism rearing its ugly head. And many times they actually just say very directly, very openly, and unashamed anti-Semitic tropes.
But if Jews vote for Mandani, then what do you want?
Correct.
What's that excuse?
There is no excuse. They didn't do their homework, did they? They think that they're doing the right thing, that they're being progressive, that they're being, all inclusive. Yeah, that's important to be all inclusive. But if there's somebody that hates you and wants to kill you, that's another story. You don't want to walk into a lion's den, right, without a gun. Bottom line. So we don't hate. We don't want to see people dead, but we know how to defend ourselves if there are people that want to kill us. It's just that
We
simple.
don't have no choice.
We don't have a choice. We've been doing it for thousands of years. So what memories do you have that you want to share about my parents? We traveled together. I don't know if you remember, we traveled maybe to Niagara Falls, to Washington, D.C.
Yes.
I have photographs of all these things. What do you remember about Lake George? Tell me what you remember, Rina.
Well, we used to sleep over one night.
Yeah.
We used to go to the lake.
Right?
And we used to go on the main street. And it was very, very fun. My kids were younger than you a lot.
Yeah.
So, you took care of them. You held their hands,
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I loved Paul. Before Michael was born, he was like such a cute kid. He really was.
We were talking about
Such a cute kid, and I
we
really
were
loved him.
talking about it on the way here.
Yeah.
Because my Mike has a granddaughter.
Uh-huh.
And, she's developing very well. She's 3 months. And I was saying that Paul, at 10 months, he started walking. At a year and something, he was talking. And 3 months, he was holding himself the bottle. And he was so much in advance. So they were saying, so when did he start cooking? And
Right.
when did he start doing the laundry?
Right.
Because in 1981, I went to Israel. My father passed away. And I stayed there for a month. And they took care of their father. They were cooking, they were cleaning,
Yeah.
they were doing a lot of things. And also we had a cleaning girl, Tony, remember Tony?
Yes.
We shared with Mommy
Yeah,
and
yeah,
me.
yeah.
And Tony used to help them and cook for them. And Tony loved you, Mom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you remember her?
Oh, yeah, I remember Tony.
The Polish Tony?
Yes.
So we were talking about it.
Yeah.
We have lots of good memories.
Yeah.
Very, very, very. We were very, very close every holiday because I didn't have a lot of family and your mother and your father didn't have family either. So every holiday we spent together. It's Passover, it's Rosh Hashanah, in between. Your mother, I used to have an apartment and a bigger apartment, so everybody used to come to me, but not by me, by Pilnik, by Sarah. All the time together. And it's so funny that you met Betty here and you didn't know that she is Sarah's daughter.
Well, I met her when we showed my film, the documentary, in the Jewish Community Center,
And
Sid Jacobson in Oceanside.
Oceanside, yeah.
And she comes up to me and, your parents? I know them? She said they were at my wedding.
Yes.
And I said, who are you? And she said, I was married to Paul Pilnik. I said, Paul and Malka, I love them. And Sarah and Moshe. And I mean, we grew up together. We really did.
Yes.
We grew up together off of Ditmas and Newkirk, right? But we also grew up near Fillmore, where they lived. And then they moved to 69th Street.
And your parents
We
moved
were
with them.
tight. All of us were tight.
Very
Holocaust survivors.
Very tight.
And families of Holocaust survivors stuck together. That's what the Catskills was all about. They all went up. We
For
went
a
to
long-
I remember the Concord.
With your father. Your
Right.
mother didn't want to leave your
We
father.
went with the Pilniks to Kayamisha Lake.
Yeah.
I remember that. I tell a story. I mean, I hope nobody gets offended, but my mother and Sarah Pilnik used to, let's say, borrow ashtrays from hotels.
They were smokers.
But and brought them to our home. So we had ashtrays from every hotel. You can actually open up a museum with all these ashtrays. I don't know whatever happened to them because we all stopped smoking.
Yeah.
Or at least they did. I didn't smoke. They used to smoke in the car. Now, do you remember smoking in the car? And your kids were in the car? We didn't know then, right? But my brother and I would throw up. We got sick from it. And then they apologized to us when they learned that cigarette smoking causes cancer.
But your mom smoked too.
She did. My mom smoked, and she smoked even though she told my dad that she stopped. She would like sneak a cigarette here and there.
But Sarah was a heavy smoker.
They were, it's a very strong addiction, you know. And today, people are still smoking.
But I never smoked.
With all the education, they're still smoking.
I never smoked.
You never smoked.
Because I hated them smoking.
Yeah.
I never started, and I didn't care for it.
Right.
I hated it. So.
I remember going to public school, PS 152. It was near Brooklyn College.
Yes.
And I would walk over, and Moshe Pilnik and Paul Pilnik was in the car, and Mark and I were in the car. He had an incredible car. It was like early 1960s.
Cadillac.
The Cadillac. It had those fins in the back, and I was so impressed with his car.
Yes.
It was almost like a salmon color. It was a beautiful car.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling very special, like a VIP sitting in the back of that car when he dropped us off.
But I don't think your parents then had a car.
They didn't have a car until 1966. My father bought an Impala.
Ah, okay. So they didn't
A blue
have
Impala.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that car. He called it the Blue Beauty. And he loved that car. Mark and I used to wash that car and clean that car all the time. And then he bought a station wagon. And then he worked with Svika too in the city.
A lot.
Right? They worked together.
Marcel,
and with Marcel, he did plumbing.
He did the
PAC building, the PUC building.
The PAC
so I talk about the PUC building in the movie.
Yes.
That my father did plastering there.
You have the pictures from the PAC building.
The PUC building,
when he is on the ladder.
Right.
Right.
So this is the story. So this is the story about the PUC building. The PUC building houses the Pratt Institute.
Oh.
And I told that story here to high school students, and my hair stood up. Why? Because I was talking about, look, that's my dad doing plaster work in the PUC building. This is after I tell his whole story and what life was like growing up with him. And I said, inside of that building was the Pratt Institute, and then my hair stood up, and I realized this is the Pratt home.
Yeah.
So, yes, so this was the Pratt family home 100 years ago. Yeah. So it all came full circle, and I realized my father was with me. And every time I say that story, my hair stands up. And there's so many signs that my father and my mother are still around somehow, some way.
A lot. Even in my backyard,
right.
Concrete on my backyard. You worked and your brother worked on that building.
I remember doing that in Staten Island.
Because every time that there were work to be done, they all helped each other.
Right. And you remember Ken?
Yeah.
And Sheila?
PAC building was with Kenny.
Right. And they were part of this group also, right? And Ira Cohen, and I'm friends with Ira's son, Keith.
Yeah.
He lives here
in Wantua area. Yeah, so I'm friends with them and Doreen, and we'll probably see them this weekend, actually.
Really?
Yeah, we're very good friends. They're wonderful people. And I remember Ira and Yvette wonderful people.
Right.
So this group that I recall gives me such a warm feeling that it's nice to see friends being that close for such a long time.
Very long time.
Until my mother got sick, and then I remember my mom didn't want to see a lot of people because she was embarrassed that she didn't have a leg and then two legs, that she didn't want to deal with anything. She had enough of life, I think, and it broke my heart. My father took care of her till the very end. He didn't want any aids. He helped her to the very end. And every single day for 5 years, he was crying. Every day. You remember.
I know.
He cried every day about my mother. That's all he talked about. Because she was the love of his life. And she took care of him.
Let me take you back a long time ago.
Yes.
So since I know the stories, before I even knew my husband, but my husband used to tell me that even he used to live across from the building, and you were babies, you and your brother.
Yeah.
By 6 o'clock, all the diapers were on the line. Everything was washed, everything was done. Now, before we came to United States, I went to visit. At that time, your father already had a building, the house that he built. It was across from a park.
Yes, I remember the park.
There was, I remember, a table with the glass on top, and underneath the glass there were all kinds of pictures.
Oh, wow.
And then she had the watermelon, and I went to cut the watermelon, and she said, "Wait a second, Miriam, you don't know how to cut for twins." She took that cut and looked at both sides, and it had to be even. And only then she gave, gave you.
Let me tell you, me and Mark used to call her the equalizer.
Yes.
Because everything had to be equal. Equal. And when we grew up, we had the same exact clothes, the same amount of underwear. I mean, we shared everything.
Because she was so careful.
She was so
not
Why?
to.
Why? And you know what? I remember her saying, I said, "Mom, you know, I love my mom so much. I used to tell her, when I grow older and you get old, I said, I want you to live with us. I want you and Dad to live with us." And she says, "What? We're not going to live with you. We're not going to." She used to say, "We're not going to sit on top of your head." That's what she always said. "We're not going to sit on top of your head. We don't want to be. We can be close, but not that close. A half hour away," she said, "is fine."
When she got sick, and there was a choice for her to go to the hospital on King's Highway, which
Yes,
was not
I
such a
remember.
great. She didn't want to go to the city because it will be too hard for your father.
Yes, yes.
So she spent a half a year
Yes.
in King's Highway
Yes,
Hospital.
yes, I remember.
And she would tell me, "Stay home," and I wouldn't stay home, and I would come with Marcel, and she would say, "Oh, to your father, go with Marcel, have lunch." And I sat with her, and she would tell me stories because she said, "Look, I don't. It's hard for him." She only thought about how to make it easy for you, for the kids, and for her husband.
She was always so considerate of everybody, not just her family, but her friends, all the time.
Then she went to see Zvika's mother.
Yeah.
No, at that time, she especially went to visit my aunt. It was so nice.
With a bicycle.
With the bicycle?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, yeah.
And
She
would
used to
call
love
me-
to ride the bicycle.
And she would call me and tell me, "I saw you, and she's okay."
Okay.
Because at that time she
Yeah,
was already
yeah,
alone.
Yes.
So she said, "Don't worry,
Wow.
she's okay."
She was just like that.
She
was just like that.
cared
Yeah, very
about
special. Yeah, she
everybody.
did. She really did.
So when she already didn't have one leg, and she couldn't make the stairs upstairs, I have stairs in the house. We bought a small table to fit downstairs, and we would bring everything downstairs. And I would say, "Don't eat grapes, no good for you grapes." But she loved grapes. She loved grapes. She couldn't say no.
I know. So let me just share with you that I met Joanne, my wife, the same year my mother died.
Oh.
And the first day that we communicated with each other was on my mother's birth date. And there are so many signs that my mother somehow, from wherever she is, pushed Joanne into my life. And Joanne is actually very similar, when you describe my mother, very similar to Joanne, who's very caring about other people more than herself, and very giving and very kind and generous. And she's just like my mom. It's almost like I have my mom again. And not that I want to marry my mom, but it's just somehow this happened. And let me tell you something. Me and my mom were very close. I don't know if you want to call it a mama's boy, but I was always by her side when I was a little kid. And I remember when I was about 3 or 4 years old in Bat Yam, we used to go on a truck from Yazoo.
I know.
And we used to sing. We used to sing.
I went on the same.
Do you remember?
Track.
We used to sing on the truck all the way to Bat Yam. And I remember my mother would always bring eggs, boiled eggs, hard-boiled eggs, and tomatoes and watermelon. And we used to have a party, right?
You remember all this?
Yes. And my mother would go into the water. She was in her 20s, I guess. And she would run into the water, and I used to cry because I thought she would never come back out. And I was that attached to my mother. I really was. And I was always attached to her. And my heart broke when she got diabetes. And when she found out that her father, which I believe, if I am correct, I hope I'm correct, that this was her stepfather, because her father actually died before they ended up in a DP camp. Shlomo Rosenblum, actually, according to all the records, he was deceased. So I don't know if he was killed by Nazis or he died somehow, some way. I don't know what happened to him. Maybe he ended up in a camp. I don't know the story, unless you do. But when her stepfather died, I remember in Yazoo, she opened up the mailbox, got the telegram that he died, and she let out a scream and grabbed my hand and ran into the house. This is the first memory I have of her being upset about something, and I had nightmares about it for my entire life. You know, I really did. And so I was very close with her, and I loved all of her friends, and they loved all of us, and it was really one big extended family. It really was. So,
do you remember Königsberg?
Of course I remember. Yeah.
That's how we met, because we came to United States and she came. We came different route, and she came a different route.
It was Yankel and Sonia, right?
Right. And
daughter,
Shalom. Right.
And I don't remember the daughter's name.
The daughter was married, I forgot the name.
Right.
But
they moved up to Canada. They moved up to Toronto.
To Canada, Toronto, right.
Yeah. I think they owned a butcher shop there, if I'm not mistaken. I looked it up.
Because she was married to a butcher.
Right.
The daughter.
So he ended up working over there. Yeah. Well, so do you remember the corner store?
Yes.
There was a shop.
Lea Rosen.
Vigoda?
Lea Rosen.
Lea Rosen. And was it Vigoda?
Yeah, the father. Also from Yazoo.
Right. So she ended up in like Carmel, Haifa, right?
Yes.
That's where she is, I think. Is she still around? Are you in touch with her?
No. She used to come a lot to your mother.
Oh, yeah.
Because she met somebody and her parents didn't want her to get married. He was older than her. Right. And she used to meet him at your parents' house.
I vaguely remember this, and I remember that she was friends with Leah from Yazoo.
Yes.
From
Leah Rosen.
Leah
right,
Rosen.
But do you remember Leah Greenblatt? Greenblatt. This is Icha and Tanya, who lived not far from us, right? Yeah. So let's.
I remember.
So you remember Icha and Tanya?
Yes.
So Tanya is the one that introduced my parents to each other. She was like the matchmaker.
I didn't know.
Yes. So my father worked for Tanya doing plaster work, and she told him, "I have a girl for you." My mother was only 16 years old at the time. She couldn't get married, so they had to fudge her certificate or her birth date to the following year or to the earlier year. To make her 17 so she can get married. So my grandmother, Liza Rosenblum, told my dad, if you're going to date her, you have to get engaged. My father had no idea what that was. He got engaged. They fell in love.
My husband was in the wedding with the engagement party.
Right.
And Gil his brothers were on the engagement
party. Right, Gil too, right?
Yeah.
So Gil is his brother, and he was a scuba diver.
Yes.
I remember this. You have a good memory, don't I? A very sharp memory. Don't ask me too many questions.
He has 6 children, and he's in the kibbutz.
Wow, 6 children.
And
I know he lived in a kibbutz.
Grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Oh my God, it's a große Mishpucha, as they say in Yiddish. Große.
Let me just tell you about your father.
Please.
After your mother passed away, your father used to come to me.
Yeah.
Because I was alone and he was alone. So one time he got lost. And I didn't understand why he got lost. So many years. I lived there for so many years and he got lost. So he was very upset about it. And I had to figure out where he is. So I took the car and found him. And after that, I learned that he was sick. He
was sick. He had glioblastoma, a brain cancer that's very aggressive. And it took him in 3 months.
Yeah, I was in vacation in Hawaii, so I kept calling from Hawaii to see how he was.
To me, I think he died of a broken heart because...
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, because
he was very, very upset.
He couldn't stand, he loved life, but he hated it at the same time because all he did was tell Joanne about the love of his life. He kept repeating the same stories to her about what she went through and this and that and, how much he loved her. And my heart breaks for I really missed him. I really do. I missed him a lot.
When they used to meet, like Kenny, Marcel, and your father, Moshe, that was all jokes and smiles, and it was such a happiness.
Yes.
Some of us would not be here if there would, because my father and mother met on the train running away to Russia.
There you go. It's a similar story, right? Because my mother also was on a train, right? They fled to Russia. They were smart. There are many that stayed where they were. In my father's village, they had a welcoming committee for the Nazis, believe it or not. But many Jews realized this is very bad, this is very dangerous. You know, and so it brings about this question, like, when do we realize how dangerous it is here or anywhere around the world, right?
That's
for
right.
Jews to live.
My father-in-law, my mother-in-law, they had a beautiful, beautiful house. My father-in-law was the carpenter. He built a 3-family house in the state in Lomazy.
Lomazy was in what country?
It's Poland,
Poland?
near Lublin.
Near Lublin, okay.
Yes. Blala Podlas, they call it. And he took his wife and his kids, and he said, not the Nazim is going to kill us. The goyim from the state are going to kill us because they own the money.
Mm-hmm.
He used to do work for them, and they ran away because my mother-in-law, Rachel, had a sister, and where is the Rosa lived? Yeah, I think it's
in Ukraine.
Yes,
The part of Ukraine that was Poland.
Yeah.
It's really intermixed.
That's where my father was from.
So my father was 9 years younger than his sister.
Mm-hmm.
So they ran away together, and they were in one caravan, and my mother ran away with her girlfriend and with her cousin in another caravan. And that's how they met. But the point is, in my mother's case, she was from Warsaw, and my grandfather had a store, and he had horses, and he had a carriage, and my mother said, please, let's run away. And he said, you smarkata, you know, that's you nothing and nothing, you're a little kid, you're going to tell me I lived through World War I.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to live through World War II.
Mm-hmm.
If you run away, don't dare to take anything from the house. So she took her school book, put some salami in there and bread, and that's how she ran away.
And she survived.
And
that's sometimes you have to be smart like this, right? So we have to know when, right? So there's a lot of listeners and people who watch who are also second generation of Holocaust survivors, and whatever we're talking about today, they probably resonates with them because they're similar stories. All of us have very similar stories. We're one big family, and we went through the same thing, and we're still going through it, right? I mean, October 7th was like the worst.
Was the second Holocaust.
Was the worst massacre since the Holocaust of Jewish people, and people don't get it, you know. And if this happens, we have to defend ourselves. People don't understand why we need to have a small piece of land. Just leave us alone. Just leave us alone. Let us do.
We thought that it's going to assure us.
It's almost like, why do we always have to be in a bad neighborhood? Why can't we be somewhere where people don't hate us, right? Just leave us alone and let us live. You know, by the way, 2,000 years ago, when the diaspora began, Jews went all around the world. They went to Portugal, into Ethiopia. They went up north. They went into China. They went into India. There's a sect of Jews in India that have been there for 2,000 years. And I know some of them who say there is no anti-Semitism in India. Now, that's a good neighborhood, you see. Why can't we find a good neighborhood, but we can't? And that's the reality, and this is the story, and this is where we came from, and that's where we have to go. So, listen, I want to thank you so much for coming all this way to spend a little time with me to talk about our past, to arouse some memories, very fond memories. And I have wonderful memories of all of you and your families, and I love you both. And I thank you for joining me today on Raised by Survivors here at the Holocaust Museum here on Long Island. And I want to thank my listening audience as well for joining me on this very personal little journey I had today with my very dear friends, Rina Berman and Miriam will talking about what it was like growing up here in New York, what it was like for them during the war, after the war, and what's it like today. Until next time.
If you enjoyed exploring the information, history, and stories in today's conversation, be sure to check out our other podcasts here on HMTV. Please subscribe, share, and stay connected for more engaging conversations.
Humanity Matters.